The fluorescent lights of stellar tech buzzed above me, mocking my every move. Another soul-crushing Monday. I, Liam, once the golden boy of the marketing department, felt like a walking, talking ghost. The energy I used to bring, the ideas that flowed so freely, were now dammed up behind a wall of anxiety and dread. It had started subtly. A shift in David's demeanor. My boss, a man I'd actually considered a friend once. Fewer smiles, clipped responses, and those damn closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. The whispers started. Rumors of restructuring, of budget cuts, of, well, I poured another cup of lukewarm coffee, the bitter taste a perfect reflection of my mood. Sarah, my office bestie, caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic grimace. She knew something was up. We'd been through thick and thin together, countless late nights fueled by pizza and sheer determination. But even she couldn't penetrate the icy wall that had grown around me. I tried to focus on the project proposal in front of me, a new social media campaign for Stellar Tech's flagship product. I'd poured my heart and soul into it. This could be my saving grace, the thing that proved my worth, that silenced the whispers. But my hands shook as I typed. The words felt hollow, empty, like I was writing my own eulogy. Around 3 p.m., David's assistant, a timid girl named Emily, approached my cubicle. "Liam? David wants to see you in his office." Now, my stomach dropped. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading, the moment I knew was coming. I forced a smile for Emily, trying to project an air of confidence I definitely didn't feel. "Sure, Emily. Thanks." My legs felt like lead as I walked towards David's office. Every step echoed in the sudden silence that seemed to have fallen over the entire department. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the frantic drumming of my heart. David's office was all sleek lines and expensive artwork, a constant reminder of the gulf between him and me, between the haves and the have-nots. He was sitting behind his massive desk, his face unreadable. "Liam, come in, have a seat." His voice was flat, devoid of warmth. The moment I sat down, I knew. The rehearsed speech about restructuring and difficult decisions flowed from his mouth like poison. I barely registered the words. All I heard was the death knell of my career, my security, my future. "We appreciate your contributions to Stellar Tech, Liam, but we've decided to go in a different direction." A different direction. That's corporate speak for "you're fired." The world swam. The room seemed to shrink, suffocating me. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw something, but I just sat there, numb. "Effective immediately," he continued, his voice still emotionless. "Your severance package is outlined in the documents here." He pushed a thick envelope across the desk. It felt heavy, laden with the weight of my failure. I managed a week. Okay, that was it. My entire life, reduced to a few mumbled words and a thick envelope filled with promises and stipulations. I stood up, feeling like a puppet with its strings cut. David didn't even bother to stand. He just nodded curtly. As I walked out of his office, I saw Sarah staring at me, her face etched with concern. I shook my head slightly, unable to speak. The shame burned like acid in my throat. I quickly gathered my things: a framed picture of my dog, a few motivational posters, a half-eaten bag of chips. Each item felt like a piece of my soul being ripped away. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I couldn't. I just wanted to disappear, to crawl into a hole and never come out. As I walked out of Stellar Tech for what I knew would be the last time, the fluorescent lights seemed to intensify, burning into my retinas. I felt like I was walking into a blinding abyss. I was unemployed. I was lost. And I was terrified. The days that followed were a blur of despair and self-loathing. I stayed in my apartment, curtains drawn, barely eating, barely sleeping. The severance package felt like blood money, a constant reminder of my failure. Sarah called every day, offering support, urging me to get out of the house. But I couldn't. The thought of facing the world, of answering the inevitable questions. So, what are you doing now? Was unbearable. I applied for a few jobs, half-heartedly, but the rejections piled up, each one a fresh stab wound to my already battered ego. Then the email came from David. My blood ran cold just seeing his name in my inbox. Subject: Transition Assistance, Transition Assistance. More corporate speak for, we need you to clean up our mess. I hesitated for a long time before opening it. I knew it couldn't be good. Liam, it read, as part of your transition, we require your assistance in training your replacement. We have identified Emily Carter as the ideal candidate. We need you to work with her for the next 2 weeks to ensure a smooth handover of your projects and responsibilities. Emily Carter, the timid assistant. My replacement? Rage surged through me, hot and violent. I wanted to scream, to break something, to unleash the fury that had been building inside me. They fired me. They destroyed my career. And now, they wanted me to train the person who was taking my job. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. My first instinct was to delete the email, to ignore it completely, to tell them to go to hell. But then, a different thought crept into my mind, a darker, more insidious thought. What if? What if I used this opportunity? What if I turned their request into my own personal revenge? I pictured Emily, wide-eyed and eager to please. I pictured David, smug and self-satisfied. And I pictured myself, holding all the cards. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. I replied to the email, "Okay, I'm available to assist with Emily's training." The game was on. Walking back into Stellar Tech felt surreal. It was like stepping back into a nightmare. The fluorescent lights seemed even brighter, the air even colder. The faces of my former colleagues were a mix of pity, curiosity, and awkward avoidance. I found Emily waiting for me at my old cubicle, which was now adorned with a nameplate bearing her name. She looked even more nervous than usual. "Liam! Hi! Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it." Her voice was high-pitched and trembling. I forced a smile. "No problem, Emily. Happy to help." The next 2 weeks were a torturous exercise in patience and restraint. I spent my days explaining my projects to Emily, meticulously documenting my processes, and answering her endless questions. But beneath the surface, a different game was being played. A game of subtle sabotage, of carefully planted seeds of doubt, of strategically misleading instructions. I taught her the basics, of course, the things she needed to know to function. But I also made sure to highlight the most complex, confusing aspects of my job, the areas where I had developed unique, almost intuitive solutions, the things that would make her life a living hell. I also played on her insecurities. I emphasized the high stakes of the job, the demanding deadlines, the unforgiving expectations of the higher-ups. I watched as her confidence slowly crumbled, as the initial excitement faded into a look of quiet desperation. During lunch breaks, I would subtly badmouth David, painting him as a ruthless, manipulative boss who cared only about the bottom line. I told her stories of his impossible demands, his unfair criticisms, his complete lack of empathy. I watched as her eyes widened, as the seeds of resentment began to take root. "He's really intense," she said one day, her voice barely above a whisper. "Intense is one word for it," I replied with a knowing smile. "Just be careful, Emily. He'll chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful." I knew I was being petty. I knew I was probably making things worse for her. But I couldn't help it. The anger and resentment were consuming me, driving me to act in ways I never thought possible. One afternoon, I accidentally deleted a crucial file from her computer. I pretended to be horrified, of course, offering my profuse apologies and doing my best to help her recover it. But secretly, I reveled in her panic and frustration. Another time, I gave her a set of instructions that were deliberately misleading, knowing they would lead her to make a huge mistake. I watched from a distance as she presented her work to David, cringing as he tore it apart. The guilt gnawed at me, of course, but the satisfaction was almost overwhelming. I was finally getting my revenge. Sarah noticed the change in me. She saw the darkness in my eyes, the bitterness in my smile. "Liam, what are you doing?" she asked one day, her voice filled with concern. "This isn't you. You're becoming someone I don't even recognize. I'm just helping Emily learn the ropes," I said defensively. "No, you're not," she countered. "You're sabotaging her. You're trying to make her fail. Why are you doing this?" I couldn't answer her. I didn't know how to explain the depth of my anger, the burning desire for revenge. "They ruined my life, Sarah," one finally said, my voice cracking with emotion. "They took everything from me. They deserve this." "But Emily doesn't deserve this," she replied softly. "She's just trying to do her job. You're hurting an innocent person." Her words hit me hard. For the first time, I saw the situation from Emily's perspective. I saw the fear and uncertainty in her eyes. I realized that I was becoming the very thing I hated, a cruel, manipulative bully. The guilt washed over me, overwhelming and suffocating. I had gone too far. I had crossed a line. I knew I had to stop. The next day, I went to Emily's cubicle with a heavy heart. I knew I had to confess, to tell her the truth about my actions. She looked up at me, her eyes wary. "Liam? Is everything okay?" "Emily," I said, my voice trembling. "I need to talk to you about something." I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about my anger, my resentment, my desire for revenge. I told her about the sabotaged files, the misleading instructions, the subtle manipulation. As I spoke, I watched her face change from confusion to disbelief to anger. You were doing this on purpose?" she asked, her voice shaking with rage. "Yes," I admitted. My head hung low. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I was wrong." I was acting out of anger and bitterness. "You didn't deserve any of this." She stood up, her fists clenched. "How could you do this to me? I trusted you. I thought you were trying to help me." "I know," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "And I betrayed that trust. I understand if you hate me." "I deserve it." She stared at me for a long time, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and hurt. Then, she took a deep breath and sat back down. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Now," I said, "I'm going to do everything I can to fix this. I'm going to tell David everything. I'm going to explain what I did and why I did it. And I'm going to help you succeed in this job, even if it means losing everything else." She looked at me skeptically. "Do you really mean that?" "Yes," I said with conviction. "I do. I want to make amends for my mistakes. I want to help you, because you deserve it." We spent the rest of the day working together, going over everything I had taught her, correcting my mistakes, and filling in the gaps in her knowledge. I explained the nuances of the job, the hidden pitfalls, the secrets to success. I could see her confidence slowly returning, her fear gradually receding. She started to ask insightful questions, to challenge my assumptions, to offer her own ideas. For the first time, I saw her potential. I realized that she was actually quite talented, intelligent, and capable. I had been so blinded by my own anger that I had completely overlooked her abilities. By the end of the day, we had made significant progress. She still had a lot to learn, but she was on the right track. I knew that telling David the truth would be a huge risk. It could cost me my reputation, my career, and possibly even legal repercussions. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I owed it to Emily. I owed it to myself. The next morning, I walked into David's office, unannounced. He looked up from his computer, his face a mask of annoyance. "Liam? What are you doing here? Your training period ended yesterday. I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice firm. "It's about Emily Carter." He raised an eyebrow. "What about her?" Is she not working out? She's working out fine, I said. But that's because I helped her. I helped her by sabotaging her training, by deliberately misleading her, by trying to make her fail. David's face turned ashen. What are you talking about? I told him everything. I told him about my anger at being fired, my desire for revenge, my deliberate attempts to undermine Emily's training. He listened in silence, his eyes wide with disbelief. When I finished, he sat back in his chair, his face pale. Are you admitting to sabotaging company property, intentionally misleading a colleague, and generally acting in a manner detrimental to Stellar Tech? He asked, his voice dangerously low. Yes, I said. I am. I know I was wrong. I know I deserve to be punished. But I needed you to know the truth. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes filled with contempt. You're a fool, Liam. A pathetic, vindictive fool. You had a good thing here and you threw it all away. I know, I said. I made a mistake, but I'm trying to make amends. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. There's nothing you can do to fix this, he said. You're fired! Again. And this time, I'm going to make sure you never work in this industry again. He stood up and pointed to the door. Get out of my office. And don't ever come back. I walked out of his office, feeling a strange sense of relief. I had told the truth. I had faced the consequences of my actions. I had done the right thing, even if it meant losing everything. As I walked through the department, I saw Emily standing by her cubicle, watching me. Our eyes met, and she gave me a small, hesitant smile. I smiled back. It wasn't over. Not yet. The next few days were a whirlwind. David, true to his word, launched a full-scale investigation into my actions. He interviewed my former colleagues, trying to gather evidence against me. But something unexpected happened. People started to stand up for me. Sarah, of course, was my biggest supporter. She told everyone how hard I had worked at Stellar Tech, how dedicated I had been, and how unfairly I had been treated. But others joined in as well. People the first barely knew, people I had never expected to support me. They told stories of David's bullying behavior, his unreasonable demands, his lack of appreciation for his employees. They started to realize that I wasn't the only victim in this situation. They had all been victims of David's toxic leadership. Emily, surprisingly, became one of my strongest advocates. She told David that I had confessed everything to her, that I had helped her correct my mistakes, and that I had been genuinely remorseful for my actions. She even went so far as to say that I had taught her more in the past few days than she had learned in her entire time at Stellar Tech. The tide was turning. The whispers that had once been filled with pity and scorn were now filled with admiration and respect. David was furious. He couldn't believe that his own employees were turning against him. He tried to silence them, to intimidate them, but it was too late. The rebellion had begun. One afternoon, Sarah came to my apartment, her face flushed with excitement. Liam, you won't believe what's happening, she said. The entire marketing department is threatening to quit if David doesn't apologize to you and reinstate you. I stared at her in disbelief. They're doing what? They're staging a walkout, she said. They're tired of David's crap. They're tired of being treated like disposable cogs in a machine. They're standing up for what's right. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I had never expected this. I had never thought that my actions could inspire such a powerful response. What am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice trembling. You're supposed to lead them, she said with a confident smile. You're supposed to show them that they're not alone. You're supposed to fight for what you believe in. The next day, I joined the walkout. As I stood outside Stellar Tech with my former colleagues, holding signs and chanting slogans, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. We were fighting for justice, for fairness, for respect. We were fighting for a better workplace, a better future. The media picked up the story, and soon, Stellar Tech was facing a public relations nightmare. David was forced to respond. He called a press conference and offered a carefully worded apology, admitting that he had made mistakes in his handling of the situation. He announced that he was stepping down as head of the marketing department and that an independent investigation would be launched into his leadership style. He also offered me my job back. I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to return to Stellar Tech. I had been through so much, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust them again. But then I looked at my former colleagues, at the people who had stood up for me, who had risked their careers to fight for what was right. I realized that I couldn't abandon them. I had to stay and help them build a better future. I accepted the offer. The days that followed were filled with meetings, negotiations, and planning sessions. We worked together to create a more collaborative, more inclusive, and more supportive work environment. We established a new code of conduct, a set of principles that would guide our behavior and ensure that everyone was treated with respect and dignity. We created a mentorship program, pairing experienced employees with newer ones, providing them with guidance and support. We implemented a feedback system, allowing employees to anonymously share their concerns and suggestions with management. We transformed the marketing department into a model of collaboration and innovation. Emily thrived in her new role. With my genuine support and guidance, she quickly became a valuable member of the team. She developed her skills, gained confidence, and started to shine. David, as far as I know, is working at some small firm in another state. I don't think about him much. I learned a valuable lesson from this experience. I learned that anger and resentment can be destructive forces, leading to actions that you later regret. I learned that revenge is never the answer. But I also learned that standing up for what you believe in, even when it's difficult, can make a real difference. I learned that true strength comes not from seeking revenge, but from forgiving and moving forward. And I learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a brighter future. My firing was a devastating blow, but it ultimately led me to a better place. It forced me to confront my own flaws, to learn from my mistakes, and to become a better person. It also taught me the importance of loyalty, compassion, and the power of collective action. I am no longer the golden boy of Stellar Tech, but I am something much more valuable, a leader, a mentor, and a friend. And that, I realized, is worth more than any amount of money or recognition. The fluorescent lights of Stellar Tech still buzz, but now they illuminate a path forward, a path of growth, healing, and ultimately, redemption. I finally understood that the real power wasn't in getting even, but in rising above. My career almost died, but a new one began, stronger and more meaningful than I could have ever imagined. And that ultimately is the best revenge of all. The dust settled. The walkout became a legendary story whispered in the Stellar Tech hallways, a reminder that even in the most corporate of environments, people power could prevail. The marketing department felt different. Lighter, more collaborative, less driven by fear and more by genuine passion. Returning wasn't easy. There were whispers, sideways glances, and the occasional awkward silence. But I pushed through, focusing on my work and on rebuilding trust. I made a conscious effort to be more open, more approachable, and less consumed. My relationship with Sarah deepened. She had been my rock through the whole ordeal, the one constant in a sea of chaos. I finally realized how much I valued her friendship, her unwavering support, and her ability to call me out on my BS. One evening, after a particularly long day, we found ourselves at our usual haunt, a dimly lit bar around the corner from the office. We'd been through so much together, shared so many secrets and dreams, and I realized that my feelings for her had evolved beyond simple friendship. "You know," I said, swirling the ice in my glass, "I don't know what I would have done without you, Sarah. You were the only one who kept me from completely losing it." She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's what friends are for, Liam. Besides, you're not exactly easy to let go of." I reached across the table and took her hand, "There's something I need to tell you," I said, my voice suddenly thick with emotion. I think I'm falling in love with you." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't pull away. "I think I'm falling in love with you too, Liam," she whispered. That night marked a turning point in our relationship. We were no longer just friends, but something more. We started spending more time together outside of work, exploring new restaurants, going to concerts, and simply enjoying each other's company. As for Emily, our relationship transformed as well. The initial animosity faded, replaced by a grudging respect and eventually, a genuine friendship. I mentored her, not just in the technical aspects of the job, but also in navigating the corporate world, in standing up for herself, and in finding her own voice. She blossomed under my guidance. She took on new challenges, spearheaded innovative projects, and quickly became a rising star in the company. One day, she came to my office, her face beaming with pride. "I got promoted," she announced. "I'm going to be a team lead." I stood up and gave her a hug. "I knew you could do it, Emily," I said. "I'm so proud of you," she smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you, Liam. Thank you for everything." We both knew that our relationship had started on a rocky foundation, but we had managed to overcome our differences and forge a genuine connection. I realized that sometimes the most unexpected friendships can emerge from the most difficult circumstances. I even received a letter from a few people who saw the news and were inspired by it. One was even another employee that had been unjustly fired and was looking to build up the courage to face his own adversity. This letter, I believe, gave me a strong sense of self-worth. The experience at Stellar Tech changed me. It made me more empathetic, more resilient, and more aware of the power of human connection. I learned that it's not just about climbing the corporate ladder, but about lifting others along the way. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered. It wasn't about the title or the salary, but about the impact I could have on the lives of others. I found fulfillment in mentoring young professionals, in advocating for employee rights, and in creating a more positive and inclusive work environment. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But I had learned to navigate those challenges with grace, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. Looking back, I realized that getting fired from Stellar Tech was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to reevaluate my priorities, to rediscover my passion, and to embark on a new chapter of my life. And as I stood there, hand in hand with Sarah, watching the sunset over the city skyline, I knew that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The scars remained, a constant reminder of the pain I had endured, but they were also a symbol of my strength, my resilience, and my unwavering belief in the power of human potential. I finally understood that the greatest revenge wasn't about getting even, but about living a life filled with purpose, passion, and love. A life where I could make a difference, one person at a time. And that, I realized, was the ultimate victory. Years passed. Stellar Tech, once a symbol of corporate greed and toxic leadership in my mind, slowly transformed. The changes we'd implemented, the new culture we'd fostered, had taken root. It wasn't perfect. Corporate life rarely is, but it was significantly better. I received occasional updates from Sarah and Emily, both of whom continued to thrive, reaching new heights in their careers. They spoke of a palpable shift in the company's ethos, a genuine commitment to employee well-being and ethical practices. I, however, moved on. The experience at Stellar Tech, while transformative, had also ignited a passion for advocacy within me. I realized my skills were better suited to helping others navigate the complexities of the corporate world, fighting for fair treatment, and ensuring that employees had a voice. I started a consulting firm, focusing on workplace culture and employee empowerment. My past experiences became my greatest asset. I could speak with authority about the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of ethical leadership, and the transformative potential of a truly supportive work environment. My firm quickly gained a reputation for its innovative approach and its unwavering commitment to its clients. We helped countless companies overhaul their workplace cultures, reduce employee turnover, and improve overall productivity. I even wrote a book, The Ethical Algorithm, Humanizing the Corporate Machine, it was called. It became a bestseller, lauded for its insightful analysis and its practical advice. I became a sought-after speaker, traveling the world, sharing my story and inspiring others to create positive change in their own workplaces. One day, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "A grateful employee." Intrigued, I opened it. The email was from a current employee at Stellar Tech. They had stumbled upon my book and had been deeply moved by my story. They wrote about the positive changes they had witnessed at the company, the legacy of the walkout, and the ongoing commitment to ethical practices. Then came the twist. "There's also something else you should know," the email continued. "While the culture is significantly better, a few of the old guard remain. They're subtle, but their influence is still felt. They're not overtly malicious, but they represent the old way of doing things, prioritizing profit over people." The email included a detailed account of a new initiative being pushed by a small group of executives. It was seemingly innocuous, a streamlining of operations, a reduction in overhead, but upon closer inspection, it was clear that it would result in the elimination of several key employee benefits and a subtle increase in workload for everyone. "We're trying to fight it," the email concluded, "but we're outgunned. Any advice?" A smile crept across my face. Some things never change, it seemed. Even in the most reformed environments, the temptation to prioritize profit over people could resurface. I replied to the email, offering my support and my expertise. I connected them with a network of labor lawyers and workplace advocates. I even offered to provide pro bono consulting services to help them develop a strategy to counter the initiative. I hadn't completely abandoned my rebellious spirit, it seemed. I had simply channeled it into a more constructive, more strategic form. I was no longer fighting for personal revenge, but for the principles I believed in. The news of my involvement quickly spread throughout Stellar Tech. The executives pushing the initiative were caught off guard. They hadn't anticipated that I would still be watching, still be willing to fight. Faced with mounting pressure from employees and the threat of negative publicity, they quietly withdrew the initiative. The victory was small but significant. It was a reminder that even years later, the ripple effects of the walkout were still being felt, that the fight for justice and fairness was never truly over, and that even a former pariah could still make a difference. And as I closed my laptop that night, a sense of profound satisfaction washed over me. The fluorescent lights of Stellar Tech were still buzzing, somewhere out there, but now they were illuminating a battlefield, and I was ready to fight.